What are you doing?
It's a Gmail. I'm pulling it up.
Oh, you don't actually.
Gillian, don't tell me how to use my computer.
I was making it. Yeah, you've gone past it.
E hihoa, e tō mātou, matua I te rangi. Ko koe te atua kaharawa o rā tonu. Nau mātou, I whaka o rā. A te ia no a tia te ti matanga o tēnei rā. Mau, mā te mia taha. Mātau e ti aki a iene. Kaua hoki. Mātau e tū kia taka I tēnei rā. Ki te hara. Kia ria. Rānei. Ki roto. Ki te mate. Ingari. Tohu tohu ne. Pokati ka ia e koe. A mātou mahe katoa. Kia mea tonu ai mātau e ne mea e tai nana ki tō titiro. Ko ehu kariki hoki tō mātou kariki. Amen.
Amen.
Ko te amorangi ki mua, te hāpai ho ki muri. E hara takutoa I te toa takitahi. Engari, he toa takitina. Whatanga rongaro te tangata, toi tū te whenua. Ko te reo reo a kia ki uta. Ko te whakataki mai a toroa ki tai. He kōtuku ki te raki. He kakapo ki te whenua. Haomi e, hui e, taiki e.
This is Joan.
No, here we go. Kia ora mai koutou katoa. Ngā mihi mahana ki koutou katoa. Ki te atua tēnā koe. Ki te papa tuanuku tēnā koe. Ki te wharenei tēnā koe. Ki te hunga mate moi mai rā. Ki te hunga ora nau mai haere mai. Nō rira tēnei koutou, tēnā koutou. Ko kia ora mai tātou.
Ora.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou e te whānau. Ko te atua, te poi manaki, te poi atawhai, te kaihanga o ngā mea katoa. Kua hui mai nei, ki tēnei hui hui nā. I ngā māti, he mai mai aroha ki a koutou. Ka nui te hari, mō tō koutou manawa nui, ki te aro mai, ki te awhina, i ngā kōrero, e pā ana ki tēnei kaupapa Taha Māori. Tēnā tātou e hui hui mai nei, ngā rau awa, tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia ora.
E te atua, kua rui anei, o pura pai. O mai e koe, he ngā kauhou, kia tupu ake ai. E ihu kaua e tukua, ia whakamāromia. Me whakatupu ake ai, kia kitea ai ngā hua. A mā te wairua tāpura, mātou te tiaki. Kei hoki ki te mahihe, o mātou ngā kauhou. Amine.
Beautiful. Ngā mihi ki ngā kai waiata I tēnei ata. Just if you're wondering about that himene, Himene 116, it is from the Maori hymn book. Some of you might have a copy, some of you may have seen the book, but if you want to purchase the book with all the Maori hymns in them, there's no translations, but the book is there, and you can email Te Pihopatanga o Aotearoa on that email address on the screen and purchase one. They'll send it to you. And there are 200 and, I'll tell you in a minute, 209 hymns in the book. And many of Kingi Ihaka's hymns are there. So beautiful hymn from Hātea. Nō reira, e te whānau a te karaiti, nau mai hoki mai, hi tō tātou nei kaupapa. Thank you so much, everyone, for your openings and your karakia and your mihi and gathering once more in Taha Māori. It's always a pleasure to serve you in this way. Thank you. Couple of hard words there, I know, this morning. Thank you, Leslie. There was a couple of words there I know were just a bit tricky. And probably the only one, and it is hard, INA is a hard one, and tikana, they're hard ones. Ka pai though, beautiful. Thank you. Tino pai tō mahi I te ata nei. My usual disclaimer. And for those who haven't been able to join us from last week when the series kicked off, this series is focusing on unpacking kapa haka. We've had an interview with John Tapene, an esteemed rangatira in the kapa haka circles, and certainly within Te Hāhi Mihingare, the Anglican Church, and more specifically at Mihana Māori, the Mihana Māori Holy Sepulchre in Kahu Pou. And he is the rangatira of the Auckland Anglican Māori Club, of which I am a member. So that was a wonderful insight, really, on kapa haka, was that interview last week. We carry on with that theme this week and throughout the series. We'll continue to pick up on some readings from the Paipera Tapu, and we'll also use the sentences and collects, rāranga, me ngā inoi, that are for this coming Sunday. So for those of you who are doing virtual services on Sundays, you'll be able to practice the sentence and collect for the day. And of course, our reo kupu, waiata, himene, and that himene that you just heard is a very, very well-known one. It doesn't matter where you travel in Aotearoa and possibly even overseas. If you ask them to sing it, they'll know it. They know it. If you started it, they'll come in and join in. So it's a very, very popular himene amongst Māori people. And of course, who best to tell us about or unpack kapa haka is Māori kapa haka presenters themselves. And it's an honour and blessing to be able to offer their insights to you here in Taha Māori. This particular waiata, this is a waiata, and some of you will know it. You'll hear it in a moment. Again, it's an emphasis on the, I'm bringing it up in this way because I'm emphasizing the vowel sounds again. The combination of the vowel sounds, toia, toia. And so the o has got a macron, so it's slightly more elongated, toia. Mai, mai. Te waka nei, kumea, kumea. Mai te waka nei, ki te takotoranga, very short and sharp, takotoranga, I takoto ai. Tiriti, tiriti, te mana motu hake. There'll be a translation for this shortly. Tiriti, that's treaty, so it's used a lot in Māori vernacular. A word that, you know, you may already be familiar with, but certainly when you hear it, you know they're talking about the treaty. Te tiriti o Waitangi. Mana motuhake refers to that as well. Te tangi a te manu e, all nice and short and sharp. Pipi whārau roa. Pipi whārau roa. I'm emphasizing the mana of each vowel. Each vowel has its own mana, and it should be said with its own mana. Occasionally, yes, it you know, double vowels do get lost in one word, one sound. Kui, kui, kui. Whiti, whiti ora. Hui e, of course you know this, we used it this morning. Haumi e, hui e, tai e. So generally the speaker will do the haumie, huie, and then everyone in the gathering comes in with taekia. So let's listen. Whakarongo mai ki te waiata nei. Oh, providing everything goes well.
Toi a mai te waka nei, kume a mai te waka nei. Ki te takoto rangai takoto ai, tiriti te mana motu hake, te tangi a te manu e. Pipi wharauroa, kui, 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 whiti, whiti ora, hui e taiki e. Toi a mai te waka nei, kume a mai te waka nei. Ki te takoto ranga takoto ai, tiriti te mana motu hake, te tangi a te manu e. Pipi wharauroa, kui, 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 whiti, whiti ora, hui e taiki e.
Beautiful. Toia mai, or this more popularized version that we're learning today, is the second verse of a waiata that Master Kava, Piri Pou Tapu, composed after he was instructed by Waikato Princess Te Puia Herangi in 1936 to build carved wakataua, representing the people of the principal voyaging canoes that arrived in Aotearoa from Hawaii. They are the ones we hear in the karanga opening, with that karanga, which you've heard, and I've stayed with the theme that we've stayed with since we began earlier this year, or last year actually. Tainui, Te Arawa, Tokumaru, Takitimu, Aotea, Mātātua, Kurahaupo, Orota, Ātoki Matawhao Rua. They're the canoe. And so this waiata was the second verse, as I say, of a waiata that Master Kava Piri Pou Tapu composed. So not only was he part of the carvings on the front of each canoes that he was carving at that time, but he's also a composer of music. It's a lovely one, and I'm sure I can see some lips moving during the singing of that. And so it's nice for us to know its history. The wakataua would go to Waitangi for the 1940, which is 100 years, 1940 centennial of the signing of Te Tiriti. They would be shown nationwide on newsreels and picture theatres as symbols of a Maori renaissance. And hapu scratching a living in depopulated backcountry areas, impoverished and isolated after a century of war, poverty, and epidemics, would get the message that conditions were about to change for the better. Bit of the history on that waiata. Let's hear it again.
Toi a mai te waka nei, kume a mai te waka nei. Ki te takoto rangai takoto ai, tiriti te mana motu hake, te mana mo tu hake, te tangi a te manu e. Pipi wharauro, kui, 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 whiti, whiti, ora, hui e taiki e.
So there's actions that go with it too. And of course, those young boys that are in the opening slide as well with the karanga, that's all part of a haka pōwhiri. We haven't done a haka pōwhiri yet in the series, but if you've been to a big pōwhiri, you will know that there is quite a lot in that pōwhiri, which goes on for at least an hour, if not longer. But you get that, and then those kids doing that, they're talking about toia mai. Bring in your waka. So our waka today, of course, might be a hybrid, might be an electric, might be a leaf nowadays. But it does talk about it refers to how you're arriving. How are you traveling here? Toia mai. Lovely. So that brings me to a challenge. You know me, there's always a challenge in every Taha Māori series. And I'm wanting, I shouldn't put it that way, I'm challenging you to put together a little waiata that you're singing. A little waiata of, that you've learnt in this series. It can be toia mai, it can be tūtira mai, which we covered last week. It could be a little one of those small himinis. Te aroha, te whakapono. E te rangi Māori e tata tatu e. So here's your challenge for this series in Taha Māori is to record yourself doing, you don't have to do the whole song, just one verse. Something that we can keep and something that grows us as a rōpū Taha Māori, that you're willing to actually this is where the rubber hits the road, I guess. Homework, maybe, however you view it. But we would welcome your contributions of a little waiata, a little kapa haka something. It can be whatever you think is appropriate. It's not a kōrero, this is about a waiata or a chant. And if I could have those back by Monday the 25th, Monday the 25th. Monday the 25th, is that right? Let me check on that date in the meantime. And you tell me the one to choose and we'll all record that one or two for this homework. I'll come back to you with those instructions. So that's my challenge to you on to record yourself doing a little waiata or a little haka. Toia mai te waka, ki te urunga te waka. Plenty of resources available on Google. You actually don't need to come back to the Taha Māori recordings. There's plenty of resources. Kia ora. These little sayings are directionals. We use them in church, please be seated, please kneel, please stand. We use them all the time. And in the prayer book, they're either e tu, e noho, and many others. Noho puku is silent. But these are more common ones that we use, asking people to do something. And one of the most common ones is me noi tātou, let us pray. Beautiful. You could use that all the time. Whenever you're going into a prayer, whenever you're praying for food, you don't have to do the prayer in Māori, but you can introduce the prayer by saying, me I noi tātou. Ka waiata tātou. E tu tātou. Tātou, as you know, is all of us, you included. When you use the word mato with an M, that's minus the people you are talking to. It's a good little recipe, that. When it's got M in it, it's minus the people you are talking to. When it's T, it's total. It includes everyone, the total amount of people in that hui or in that gathering. So ka waiata tātou means let us all sing, yourself included. So when you're giving the direction, you're including yourself. You've heard us use it, tēnā koutou, which is well you, or, you know, to you. Tēnā tātou katoa, you include yourself. E noho. Whakarongo mai, you've heard me use that quite a lot. Listen up. Titiro mai, you've also heard me using that when I'm running a video. Kōrero mai is a nice one. When you're trying to get people to participate in a conversation, or you're doing a round table or something like that, or someone would like to say something, they're not quite sure if they want to say it, or they feel maybe not quite confident to say it, then if this is a nice way to say kōrero mai. It doesn't always mean speak up. It means, yep, tell us, tell me. Kōrero mai. Whakaro mai is share your thoughts. Whakaro mai. So often people will sit there and they're silent right throughout the whole thing. Sometimes you need to encourage them. Share your thoughts. Whakaro mai. Kōrero mai. Turi, you don't want that being said. It was said a lot when I was a child. Yeah, but it's still said, even with adults. Kia kaha, beautiful, lovely. So again, this might be someone who's normally quiet in a gathering, or, you know, and you're trying to encourage them. So you go, kōrero mai, kia kaha. Lovely expression of encouragement. Kōrero mai, whakaro mai. Pause for a moment, kia kaha. Huri here, yeah, that's a great expression as well. So it doesn't literally mean to turn around. Often it's to refer back to. Ko huri here. Taku kōrero. So I'm going to go back to what I was saying. But it is about turning direction. Kapia, close, that's also used in prayers. Kapia te tātou hui, close this hui, me I noi tātou. Kia mahaki, you don't want this kind of said to you either, really. But if you were encouraging somebody in a one-on-one, you know, they were being quite brash, you want to sort of settle them down a little bit and quieten them down. Kia mahaki, be humble. Kaua e whakahihi, that's used in the public arena as well as in the private arena. And it does need to be said sometimes. Karanga mai, lovely. Karanga mai might be, you know, there's people hanging around at the gate, or there's people not sure what they're doing, and somebody notices them, and somebody says to you, oh, what shall we do? And I'll say, karanga mai, ngā manuhiri, karanga mai. So call them, tell them to come. Katoreka. Sorry, this is not a directional. This should have been on the next slide. And mihi ngare. So in the unpacking of kapa haka, you know, I introduced you to a lot of the words that John used in the interview. These are some of the words that our next guest will be using, who I'll introduce very shortly. Te Matatini was also mentioned last week, but I didn't offer you a translation, but this is what it literally means, the many faces. Te Matatini is the big kapa haka competition. Whakaeke, that's when the big group comes on. Waiata tira, choral, and the whakawātia is the exit. Rangi we used last week. John used it last week and he referred to the tune. But rangi in this week's interview refers to the sky. Means both. Manaki tia, support. So when you're trying to encourage people and strengthen them to, come on, kōrero mai, whakaro mai, kia kaha. You're expressing manaki tia, manaki to that person. Whenua, land, kākahu, clothing. Rohe, region, kuia, female, elder, karaua, male, elder, pakeke is a mature person. Pakeke. Generally, people with perhaps the same coloured hair as me, but certainly the older generation, pakeke, the more mature. Waha, mouth. Iara, often said twice, daily or day after day, meaning, you know, that it continues on. Kata kata. It's lovely. It's laughter. Very common expression. And we love laughing at ourselves, by the way, Māori. We just love it. We don't see it as offensive. The heart's in the right place. The ngākau is always in the right place when we kata about each other and tease each other. And we do it a lot. And it's in a whanaunga, you know, whānau way. Nobody gets offended. It's a little less stringent than certainly non-Māori protocols. So we love to kata about each other, whatever that might be. Haka mā, I brought that up last week. Ihi is the thrill or the power. It's just that extra punch in something. It's not just your sort of mainstream, it's got a bit of a punch. Tiaki, to look after. Kupu, of course, words. And tinana is the body, the physical body. Tinana. Taha, you know, Taha Māori, mātua, parents, both parents. Mātakitaki, spectators or people who are your audience. Poi poi in this sense is not the poi, the little ball on the end of a string. Poi poi in this word is to nurture. Reanga. Reanga is a generation. Pukana, you heard that one last week, to stare wildly. Kai kōrero. Kai kōrero. Megan was our kai kōrero this morning when she did the mihi. Last week it was Chris. So they're your kai kōrero when they just do the very, very casual mihi, friendly mihi. Tauira, that's us. We're the students, the learners. Piu piu is the thing behind me. Many of you know that. Tupakari is to stand strong. It's in relation to kia kaha. Tupakari. Taonga, you already know that. Treasure, ngākau, heart. Very, very important part of our vocabulary is ngākau. It's an expression. about what's on our heart. And because of the nature of kanohi ki te kanohi, face to face, we used to marae style. We used to actually saying it. And you got to speak what's on your heart. And sometimes it's not what people want to hear. But Māori find it advances us much quicker and with more clarity when we speak about what's on our nākau. And if necessary, we'll do a haka to express it. Haere mai, karanga mai, and there's katorika and mihi ngare again. Sometimes mihi ngare is spelt without the G. Both of them are correct, either way. So, unpacking kapa haka. Kahu Pou, who some of you have met already, well, virtually that is of Ngāti Porou descent. Whāngara mai tāwhiti tāna marae. It is her marae. Her secondary schooling was at Queen Victoria School in Parnell in Auckland, now closed, but remained a member of the St. Stephen's Queen Vic Trust Board right up until recently. She studied at Auckland University and Te Awa Nui a Rangi. Kahu spent many years working in the post office savings and ANZ banks. Kahu served on the vestry of Te Mihara Māori as its treasurer, secretary, and vicar's warden. And we all know what it takes to wear all those hats. And has been in the Auckland Anglican Māori Club since 1967, in the days of Tā Kingi I Haka. She claims to be semi-retired now, with a part-time position in corrections as a lay advocate ko te rangatahi in the youth court in Waitakere. As many people, like some of you, I'm sure, do in retirement, never retire. Kahu and Didi live at Selwyn Village and voluntarily plays a small kaumātua role and has done for the past 5 years. She teaches the Māori language and waiata to a small class of 12 to 15 pakeke. She acts as the village's karakia, kai karanga, is the Māori displays person, and is the helpful advisor and guide for all things Māori. She continues to make contributions at Auckland University and is kept quite busy, let's say. Retired? Yeah, right. So let's briefly hear from Kahu as she unpacks her kapa haka experience.
I've been involved with kapa haka, well, I guess since I started walking, talking, it's almost, well, I'd like to say 70 odd years, I suppose, yeah. I've been very blessed that growing up, when we lived in Rotorua, my parents used to take my sisters and brothers back to our grandparents' place in Pangara. And they, because we were the eldest mokos, we would sing with them. And every time I do kapa haka, I always see my grandparents sitting there and looking at us in awe with big smiles, because here were their mokopunas, you know, doing an action song. And we would be, what, 5, 6 years of age, and then my grandfather died in 1960, so I was about 13 then. But all those years, I knew my grandparents were really proud of us, and always think about and see them sitting on the armchair looking at their lovely morkles, their eldest morkles, you know, singing these songs, in particular doing a waiata ringa. Yeah. My grandfather, in particular, he had a beautiful voice, and in the morning, they had a farm, and we'd wake up, and he'd be singing loud, so we'd hear him, and we didn't have any clocks, or any alarms to wake us up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go milking, but we always heard our grandfather singing. And later, and then last thing at night after dinner, 7 o'clock, 7:30, we'd have karakia, and again, you know, my grandparents would be singing a hymn. Yeah, so I've always been involved with kapa haka.
What are the main disciplines in kapa haka?
For me, with my tamatatini hat on now, the main disciplines are the whakaeke, the mōtetea, the poi, waiata āringa, the haka, and the whakawātea. So there's 6 items, and those were the items that were judged, and then we had a waiata tira, which was a non-aggregate item.
What was your favourite?
Waiata ringa or the poi. I enjoyed the poi, but I'm not all that good at the poi. But waiata ringa was one of the items, and I also enjoyed the haka. I just thought the men did a wonderful job, and if we look at the haka in the 70s or 60s, you know, we had all these big men who were really wonderful, neat performers, and yet today we very rarely see a big guy on stage. It's all these slim guys with big muscles, but they still do the job really well, although I think, I guess it's my Ngāti Parautanga that tells me or says to me that, you know, because I was only very young seeing these big people perform on stage, and that was at the Hui Tōpu within the Anglican Diocese, because we were in the Waipu Diocese mainly, like the Hui Tōpu was like the Hui Amorangi that you have today. Whereas in my time, growing up from, I think the Hui Tōpu started about 1956-ish to, so the Hui Tōpu was when I saw kapa haka, because now we have, you know, kura tuatahi, there's so much going on stage, whereas when I was growing up, Māori culture for me, I only saw it on stage at the Hui Tōpu. At the Anglican yearly hui, and there we had a junior choir, and then we had the pakeke competition. But for me, these big men, and even the woman, Jacinthia, you know, they just glide along. They were just so beautiful to watch, all my big aunties and uncles, and yet, yeah, I can always see them on stage gliding along, and their pew-pews swaying, and these big men really giving it heaps. And there wasn't a lot of movement, whereas today there's so much movement. People are darting here, darting there, even though choreography today is important for our rangatahi, I think. Whereas when I was growing up, seeing my aunties and uncles and kuia and koro, yeah, they were fantastic to watch, I have to say, yeah.
Give us an insight into a waiata ringa.
Oh, I guess I'll do an Anki one, like no mai, piki mai, that the words go with your actions. I mean, you can't talk about the rangi, the sky, and you're looking down at the whenua. You know, everything is got to, your words have to suit the actions, and as a judge, you're always looking at that, and it is important. That's why it's so important to see the words prior to doing the actions, and that's what Papa Kingi, when we used all his items, you know, he would learn the words first, and then we'd have to say, oh, what does this mean? And he'd tell us what it means. So it meant if we're talking about the rangi, it's there. If we're talking about the whenua, and clapping or karanga mai or haere mai, yeah, these are the actions. You wouldn't do hara mai out there, or, you know, each kupu and the rangi would have to go with the actions, and that's what makes a waiata aringa so wonderful to watch and so beautiful, I guess. Yeah, but also the actions and the kupu need to go with your body movements. It's just not about the actions, even though I did say waiata aringa is hand movements, but it also enhances the, for any of the items that are performed, it's your whole body, your wairua, atinana talking, speaking, and you just feel within yourself about the words. And we hear John say, think about the words, think about the words. You need to be thinking, people, you know, and he's absolutely right. If we think of the words, we can remember the actions. And that's, yeah, and the pew swaying, that helps, and it makes the item, you look more beautiful on stage when your pew is swaying. Your pew talks, and all of your kakahu, you know, it's your whole body. It's just not your hands and your waha and the words coming from you. It's your whole body that helps perform waiata aringa. And when I'm judging, you can see it written on the faces of the woman, or the movements of the poi. You kind of see it, and it just brings joy to my heart to see the smile, you know, when you do the pukana, the ihi, the kata on your face. It just is absolutely beautiful to watch in the waiata aringa. But it's your whole body has to talk, not just your ringa, not just your kupu, to enhance the composers. And to be fair to your composer, you know, you owe him or her that not only the kupu, but the whole of your body speaks and thanks the composer. And that's what's so important also when we're doing when you're involved with kapa haka. Yeah, everything talks, your whole body talks. Kapa haka o waiata ringa today, you know, they use props now, and it does, it's wonderful the way, you know, you've got kites flying, or you have masks on, or different clothing on that our kapa haka groups bring on stage. And, you know, there's always a message, you know, there's a political message going on, or a couple of years ago, was it cowbells ringing? And every 2 years you see different ways of showing kapa hakas, and there's a lot of theatre work going on. There's a lot of dancing musics, you know, gone are the 2 or 4 rows, men and women in front of. There's a lot of movement going on now with waiata ringa, and I think it's really good, although sometimes there's too much movement. And when I was judging, I mentioned that I thought there was too much movement. Sometimes there is, but I think the composers know how much movement to put in, and they wear colourful, you know, someone will come dancing across the stage and waving flags and all of that. And that's good too, because it does show what kapa haka is doing for the group, is doing for rātou e mā takitaki ana. And for the judges, it just, yeah, it's just a platform to give out our message, be about, I suppose, next year, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have Te Matatini at Eden Park. I guess there's going to be, the message will be corona, or, you know, how to manaki teki wairua, because it's our bodies and whānau, our whānau, and I think the message now is teki whānau, teki whakapapa. And all of that, that's going to be a message that's going to be put out there. So kapa haka is important because we as Maori people, it's for Māori by Māori. It's just so neat how our composers, what is happening with kapa haka today about the composition. Yes, and they are in the same reanga as Auntie Ngoi Pewhairangi, Timoti Karatu, and those who have gone before us, and Tāpirana, like I said, he was the father of action song, Princess Tapuia, all of those people, you know, they in their own right earn that. And now today we see the same caliber coming through for our kapa haka. So where are we going to see this message, Jacinthia? You know, how else are we going to see this message? We don't see, for me anyway, I suppose because I go to kapa haka all the time, I don't see that message or those messages put out there as much as we do on the kapa haka platform stage. And we see 50,000 people go to kapa haka, go to Te Matatini, 30,000 at Kuratuarua or at ASB for, you know, people just flock to competitions and each rohe when they have their comps. So there's a message going out to us all, and what better way to illustrate our message but by kapa haka and seeing kapa haka perform on stage, but sing it, not just singing, but perform, not just performing, but, you know, clothing, instrumental props, colourful props, yeah, and all of that. So there's so much going. You have drums, you know, the Ratana group from Wanganui, they bring on their drums, and yet 20 years ago it was unheard of. We were only allowed 2-string guitars, I think. Now kapa haka is, and I think Te Matatini is seeing that it is enhancing our items, and it just makes it more out there for everyone and more enjoyable, and it's telling us we can do lots of things with kapa haka now. We don't just stand in 2 rows and just go up, down, out front, you know. There's all this movement, there's all these props, and for me it's absolutely wonderful for our people, and how it's seen in our everyday lives. People would say, oh, kapa haka, what's it going to do for you, or te reo Māori, whereas now a lot of people bring kapa haka into their lives. So for me, whether you a katorika, mihingare, yep, kapa haka is important, and it brings a lot into your life that you can share. Ngā mihi nui ki a koe, Jacinthia, anō ngā mihi mahana, ngā mihi aroha ki a koe, nau I tuku te wero, kia hara mai awau, ki te koro ki au tauira, tino harikoa te ngākau, kei te noho awau, I roto I tōku kāinga, ki te kōrero kia koe, mō tēnei taonga e pā ana ki te kapa haka. Mai te wā e paku awau, ki tēnei wā he te kuia haere me ki, ko tētahi ngā taonga waiho o mātou tipuna, ko te kapa haka tērā taonga. Ko ani tāpere, tērā ngā kuia ngā kraua, ko mene atu ki te pō, mai te hahi mihingare, nā rātou I poi awau I te taha o ku mātua, o ku whānau, kia tūpakari a hau, hei kai kōrero, hei waha kōrero pia, ki tēnei taonga e pāna ki te kapa haka. Nō reira, he mihi tēnei kia koe, ko ngā kōrero whakamutunga, nā tihi I ho mai, te hine ngaro, te katoa o te tinana. Kapa haka is the well-being for the soul.
Well, there's no hiding the delight that we experience, those of us who are involved in kapa haka anyway. The delight is written all over our faces, as you have seen and witnessed right back from, you know, days of old. So we're very thankful to Kahu for her unpacking her experience, particularly about waiata, ringa and poi. And of course she referred to no mai piki mai, that was the waiata ringa of choice that she spoke about. And that was the one that Kingi I Haka wrote. We've learnt it in Taha Māori series. No mai piki mai e ngā iwi nā reo ngā mana tēnara koutou katoa. Beautiful song of welcome. And that's one of her favorites. And I did note that when she talked about big women, you know, big women walking across the stage, which you don't see much of anymore, she used my name immediately afterwards. Big women, Jacinthia. And there was a shot there where you saw the poise all shine. They were, you know, when you use a black light. We went down to Te Papa. Te Papa is down in Wellington. That's a museum there that we gather once a year there for taikura. You've heard about taikura last week. And we turned off all the lights and our poise shined up. And it was great to actually do. So that was all part of props, if you like, what she was talking about. And yeah, that whole body talking. So her kōrero is no different to John's last week, and you'll hear a little bit more unpacked next week. We move now to Diana.
Te rongapai ta tapu ki te retenga a mātui, te rima o na upuko ka timata fitu. Whaka moi mitiatia, whaka kororiratia, te atua. Koa te hunga tohu te ngata I tohangia hoki rato. Ka koa te hunga nā kaumā I kiti e, kiti hoki rato e te atua. Ka koa te hunga o hua rongo, ka hui ina hoki rato te tamariki nā te atua. Ka koa te hunga e whakatoia ana mō te tika no rātou hoki te rangatiratanga o te rang. Ka koa ka koutou ina tawa rātou a koutou ina whakatoi ina hoki poaki e rātou ki noa kupu kino. Katoa mō koutou I mea teka I whakaaro te hua, te aha, ki aha. Te rangapai tina a raiti whakamoe mitia ia te kupu mana.
Lovely. Kia ora, Diana. Well done. Mahi tikana for Karaipituri.
Mani
your scripture, Karaipituri. Ka pai.
Te rarangi o te rā. Ki hai nei hoki te tama a te tangata e hara mai kia mahia e mea mana. E nāri kia mahi iha, kia tuku hoki I a ia kia mate he utu mo nā tangata tokamaha. Te inoi o te rā. E te atua mutunga kore, no I homa kia kotahi te iriri mo te murunga hara. Tukua mai kia mato kua whanau mai I te wairua hoki I hanga nei he pononga ma te karaiti. Kia kotahi a I roto te whakapono, whakaroto, me te mahi whakawaho. Ko ihu karaiti tomato ariki amine.
Amine. Ka pai, Margaret. Ka pai. Well done. Well done.
E te atua kaharawa. He ata whāngia nau ki a mātou I tēnei taima I nā kautahi ai mātou ki te inoi atu ki a koe. Kua mea nei hoki koe. Ki te huihui te hunga tokorua, tokotoru rānei I runga I tō ingoa. Ka tukoa mai e koe nā mea e inoi ai rātou. Haka mana ai nei e ihoa, nā hea me nā inoi a au ponona, ki nā mea e tau ana ki a rātou. Tukoa mai ki a mātou, ki a mōhio ki tō pono, I tēnei ao, a I tērā ao, ki a tai atu ki te oranga tōnutanga. Āmene.
Āmene. Kia ora, Deb. Sorry.
He honore, he gloria, he hallelujah ki te atua. He maungarongo, he atapai, he manaki ki runga I te mato te whenua. He hakaro pai, he hakaro kui, he hakaro roa ki ngā tangata katoa. Nō reira ki a tau, ki a tātou katoa. Te atapai o tō tātou ariki o Iukalaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga, ki te wairua tapu, ake, 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 amen.
And there's our contact details, of course, as per normal. Nō reire te whānau kua mutu ta tātou mahi I te ata nei. We've finished our work for the day. It's been wonderful to share what we have shared today. You'll see a lot of the Taha Māori Club or Kapa Haka Club have contributed their compilations with us, and you'll see them throughout the series of Taha Māori. That closing of the grace, which you're all familiar with, that was on the track of the blessing, Aotearoa, if you're familiar with that particular footage. That was David Tapeni, who's the kaiako or the kaiwhakahaere, kaiwhakamana, if you like, of Hātea Kapa Haka Club. He finished that clip with that prayer. So a lot of those expressions you already know, we've covered them in various aspects, not necessarily in the way he's presented them, on that clip, but you're already familiar with him. He honore he karakia ki te atua. So, yeah, lovely, lovely. Me koe anō hoki, Deb. So thank you for joining us. If you want to ask me anything, please just simply unmute yourself. And